Something has changed in the air around Blake Lively, and not in the way she might have hoped. Once hailed as America's sweetheart, a fashion icon, and a powerful voice for women in Hollywood, Blake is now at the center of a rapidly spiraling controversy that's turning her admirers into critics. From red carpet royalty to courtroom headlines, Lively's reputation is being chipped away. And the backlash isn't just coming from tabloids or anonymous trolls, it's coming from women. Influencers, journalists, legal experts, even former fans. Women who once cheered her on are now stepping up to question her actions, her motives, and the power she seems desperate to hold onto. Why are women turning on Blake Lively? Because something about the way this entire legal firestorm has unfolded feels deeply off. What started as a private defamation dispute with actor and director Justin Baldoni has now evolved into a public relations disaster that's raised questions far beyond the courtroom. Blake's legal team is targeting independent content creators, with subpoenas demanding their private communications and alleging defamation without concrete evidence. For many, it feels like a disturbing power play, one that weaponizes the legal system not to seek justice but to silence criticism. And that's where the real backlash begins. For years, Blake cultivated an image rooted in relatability, elegance, and female empowerment. But now that image is cracking under the weight of contradictory behavior, legal aggression, silence on vital issues, and perceived attacks on free speech. In a cultural moment where authenticity matters more than ever, her actions feel too many, tone-deaf and defensive. In this expose, we'll explore why women are turning on Blake Lively, how her carefully crafted brand is unraveling, and why her current PR strategy might be doing more harm than good. Buckle up, because the backlash is louder than ever. For years, Blake Lively was one of Hollywood's most beloved public figures. She was seen as the perfect blend of elegance and relatability, a fashion icon who could still joke on Instagram, a wife and mother who somehow made domestic life look aspirational rather than ordinary. Women admired her style, her wit, her poise, and her apparent strength. But over the past several months, the very same people who once adored her have begun to speak out. And they're not mincing words. What once looked like a clean, controlled image is now unraveling in real time. And perhaps most shocking of all, it's not critics or trolls driving the backlash, it's women. The very group that once championed her, uplifted her, and defended her are now asking tough questions, and in many cases turning away altogether. The shift didn't happen overnight. It began quietly, with growing discontent surrounding her involvement in the upcoming film adaptation of It Ends With Us. The project was already controversial, as the original novel tackles themes of domestic violence and generational trauma. When Blake Lively was cast in the lead role of Lily Bloom, many fans expressed concern. They questioned whether she was the right fit, not just in appearance, but in essence. The character of Lily is young, vulnerable, raw, and struggling to break free of a cycle of abuse. When set photos emerged showing Blake styled in a way that seemed far removed from the book's tone, overly glamorous, polished, even a little theatrical, readers were taken aback. Many felt the heart of the story had already been compromised before the film even hit theaters, but the casting backlash was just the beginning. Things escalated dramatically when Blake became tied to a legal battle involving actor-director Justin Baldoni. What initially seemed like a private dispute quickly grew into something much bigger, especially when it was revealed that content creators and online commentators were being served subpoenas, some for merely discussing the controversy. For women who had long admired Blake's support of other women, this felt like a betrayal. Why was someone who branded herself as a feminist and a champion of free expression targeting creators, especially women who were simply offering commentary? The optics were troubling, and many people, particularly those who had once defended her, started speaking out. The criticism wasn't just about legal tactics, it was about authenticity. For years, Blake Lively's brand had been built on sincerity, baking with Taylor Swift, cracking jokes with Ryan Reynolds, launching clean beauty products, and advocating for causes. But now those carefully crafted images felt hollow. The silence around the legal backlash only deepened the frustration. There were no statements, no clarifications, no efforts to explain why content creators were being dragged into a legal mess. In a cultural moment where transparency is currency and silence often reads as complicity, Blake's refusal to speak began to look like a strategic dodge rather than a dignified stance. Then came the broader criticism of the way It Ends With Us was being handled. Many readers connected deeply with the novel's themes of survival, pain, and breaking generational cycles, seeing Hollywood, and by extension Blake Lively, seemingly gloss over those complexities in favor of aesthetics hit a nerve. For a generation of women who have fought for nuanced stories about abuse and healing, the film felt like a missed opportunity. And worse, it felt like a betrayal of the very audience the story was supposed to empower. What made the backlash more intense was the way it was discussed online. TikTok, Reddit, and YouTube became battlegrounds of opinion. Creators who once praised Blake's red carpet looks or relationship with Ryan Reynolds were now dissecting her PR tactics and pointing out inconsistencies in her public image. One viral post read she built her empire on girl power, but now that real women are calling her out, she's silent. That sentiment echoed across social media. The idea that Blake only supported women when it benefited her image and turned against them when they challenged her began to stick. The situation only worsened when comparisons to other public figures emerged. Taylor Swift, who has long been associated with Blake through their well-documented friendship, was suddenly at the center of speculation. Leaked court documents hinted that Taylor might be connected to the case through private text messages or industry conversations, and her silence on the issue spoke volumes to some. Observers noted that Blake had not appeared at Taylor's recent events and vice versa. Whether or not there's any real rift between them is unclear, but the mere suggestion added fuel to the fire. If Taylor, known for her fierce loyalty, was distancing herself, what did that say about what was happening behind the scenes? Many women began to connect the dots. They saw a pattern not just in Blake's choices but in the silence surrounding them. In the age of accountability, when celebrities are expected to speak up, own their decisions, and support the people they've built their platforms on, Blake's quiet demeanor began to feel like avoidance, and in some corners of the internet, it was being called exactly that: calculated, cold, and controlling. But this isn't just about a movie role or a lawsuit. The backlash Blake Lively is facing is emblematic of a much larger cultural shift. For years, audiences accepted the idea of the perfect celebrity woman, poised, polished, supportive of all the right causes, but now people want more. They want action behind the branding. They want truth, even if it's messy, and most of all, they want authenticity. When someone benefits from the image of female empowerment but retreats or retaliates when challenged, it doesn't just look hypocritical, it feels personal. This is why the backlash has been so intense. It's not coming from a place of envy or casual dislike. It's coming from people, especially women, who once rooted for Blake, who believed in the version of her she presented, and now they're grappling with the reality that the woman behind the brand might not align with the values they hold dear. There's also a very real concern about precedent. If celebrities begin using legal mechanisms to silence creators, especially women discussing feminist themes, what does that mean for the future of online discourse? If a high-powered actress can subpoena a YouTuber for making a video essay, where does it end? These questions are resonating deeply, especially with women who've spent years carving out their own spaces online to talk about books, film, trauma, and personal empowerment. Blake's critics aren't demanding perfection, they're asking for accountability. They're asking for acknowledgement. They're asking for the same level of respect and freedom to speak that Blake herself has enjoyed throughout her career. And when those questions are met with silence or worse, legal pressure, it's no wonder so many women are turning away. In the end, what's happening to Blake Lively right now isn't about hate. It's about disappointment. Disappointment in the gap between the image and the reality. Disappointment in the silence when women expected solidarity. Disappointment in the idea that someone they once saw as a role model might have used that admiration to protect herself at others' expense. And perhaps most of all, disappointment in the feeling that yet another powerful figure has chosen image over integrity. In the modern era of celebrity, branding is everything. Stars aren't just known for their acting talent or fashion sense. Anymore, they're expected to represent values, take stands, and reflect the spirit of the cultural moment. For much of the past decade, Blake Lively did exactly that. She wasn't just a Hollywood actress, she was a symbol of modern-day feminism, balancing motherhood with a career, fashion with activism, and fame with authenticity. She seemed to strike the right chord, never too political, never too detached, always just relatable enough. But now, as criticism builds and her silence in the face of backlash becomes deafening, many are questioning whether the feminism she once projected was ever more than a well-tailored marketing strategy. The concept of celebrity feminism became popular in the 2010s. It emerged as a way for public figures, especially women, to show their support for gender equality while enhancing their image. It was the era of the Instagram statement, the designer t-shirt that read "The future is female," and the viral quotes about women supporting women. And Blake fit perfectly into that mold. She frequently spoke about empowerment, women's rights, and building each other up. Her friendship with Taylor Swift, her playful social media posts, and her red carpet interviews all helped frame her as one of the good ones. She was stylish, successful, and self-aware, at least that's how it seemed. But the backlash she faces today reveals a growing skepticism. toward that exact kind of curated empowerment. Many women are beginning to see celebrity feminism as surface level, a convenient brand accessory that disappears when accountability or discomfort enters the picture. And Blake's recent legal actions, particularly involving subpoenas issued to content creators, have pulled back the curtain in a very public way. What happens when a feminist brand faces scrutiny? What happens when women ask difficult questions and the response isn't dialogue, but legal pressure? For many, Blake's actions feel like a contradiction. How can someone champion women's voices while appearing to suppress them? How can someone claim to support storytelling and emotional truth while being tied to a lawsuit that reportedly attempts to silence those commenting on exactly that? These are not small concerns. They cut to the core of what modern feminism demands: not just polished statements, but ethical behavior; not just imagery, but substance. One of the most frustrating aspects of this backlash is the sense of betrayal. Women who once felt seen and represented by Blake are now feeling disillusioned. The creators who were targeted with subpoenas weren't publishing hit pieces or personal attacks. Many were simply discussing a film, a lawsuit, or the public narratives around them. Their content often focused on analyzing the themes. And it ends with us expressing concern about how survivors' stories were being adapted, and raising fair use questions about how Hollywood interacts with critique. The idea that these voices were suddenly being targeted through legal channels shook people. It made them wonder if the values Blake Lively had long claimed to represent were ever really hers, or just tools of branding. But this isn't happening in a vacuum. The public has become far more aware of how branding works in the celebrity space. Social media has made it easier than ever to see the seams in a public image, and harder than ever to keep those seams hidden. When stars speak about empowerment but act in ways that undercut it, audiences notice, and they talk, they make videos, they tweet, they write articles, and soon the image starts to shift. In Blake's case, the shift has been especially dramatic. Once admired for her sincerity and kindness, she's now being discussed in threads titled, "What Happened to Blake Lively and Why I Don't Trust Her Brand Anymore." These aren't hate forums, they're thoughtful discussions led by women, trying to make sense of the disconnect between the image and the actions. Many of these creators express sadness, not glee. They wanted to keep rooting for her, but they feel let down. Another aspect of the backlash centers on the protection of power. As the legal case involving Justin Baldoni continues to unfold, questions about influence and media control are gaining traction. The perception, fair or not, is that Blake Lively, through her team and legal representation, is trying to control the narrative by controlling who gets to speak. And that's a dangerous precedent in the eyes of many content creators, journalists, and everyday women. If celebrities can wield their power to silence uncomfortable conversations, what does that mean for the rest of us? This sense of imbalance, where powerful public figures appear to punch down rather than engage, is part of what's fueling the outrage. Critics argue that Blake could have used this moment as a chance to open up dialogue. She could have addressed concerns about the film with empathy. She could have clarified her position in the lawsuit. Instead, the silence has been interpreted as intentional, a way to avoid the emotional labor of accountability. And in 2025, that no longer flies. There's also something uniquely painful about watching a woman who benefited from female solidarity seem to weaponize systems that have historically been used against women. The court system, the entertainment industry, and the media have often marginalized women's voices, especially when they challenge dominant narratives. When a woman appears to align with those same tactics to protect her brand, the backlash becomes not just personal but political. It's no longer just about Blake Lively, it's about what she represents. This is why the response has been so visceral. Women feel like this isn't just another celebrity misstep, it's a warning sign, a reminder that we must be cautious in who we elevate, and discerning in what we accept as empowerment. Because when feminism becomes a brand rather than a belief, it can be discarded the moment it becomes inconvenient. That doesn't mean there's no path forward. Redemption is possible, but it requires honesty, humility, and action. If Blake Lively were to acknowledge the criticism, speak directly to the content creators affected, and engage in genuine dialogue about the story she's helping to tell, she could begin to rebuild trust. But that would mean stepping out from behind the curtain. It would mean showing the messy parts, the uncomfortable truths. And that's a risk not every celebrity is willing to take. Still, the cultural tide is changing. Audiences are no longer satisfied with polished branding and empty gestures. They want depth. They want contradiction acknowledged. They want real growth, not PR spin. And most importantly, they want to be treated as equals in the conversation, not as obstacles to be silenced. Blake's current predicament is a masterclass in what happens when celebrity feminism hits a wall. It's not just about her or this lawsuit or one controversial movie. It's about a larger reckoning with who we allow to represent our values and what we demand in return. For years being likable and empowering was enough, now it's just the starting point. What comes next is accountability, and that's where Blake Lively, at least for now, is coming up short. As we continue to follow this unfolding drama, one thing remains clear. The women turning on Blake Lively aren't doing so out of malice. They're doing so out of disappointment, out of a desire for integrity, and out of the belief that feminism should mean more than pretty pictures and inspirational quotes. It should mean action even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. As the scrutiny of Blake Lively intensifies, another conversation is emerging, one that digs even deeper into the structures of Hollywood and the illusions it creates. It's not just about Blake anymore. It's about what she symbolizes: the so-called safe woman, the ideal starlet who never stirs too much controversy, never speaks too loudly, and always makes the right move at the right time. But when the mask slips, when this supposedly safe woman is revealed to be just as calculating, just as capable of using power to protect herself, audiences feel deceived. For years, Blake Lively has been positioned as that kind of celebrity. Her rise from Gossip Girl fame to red carpet royalty wasn't just about talent, it was about image. She played characters who were messy and flawed, but off-screen she was relentlessly polished. She rarely commented on politics, but when she did, it was safe territory: women's empowerment, environmental issues, maternal health. She wasn't an activist, but she played one on Instagram, and for a long time that was enough. But the recent fallout has shattered the illusion. Women are realizing that safety in celebrity often means complicity. It means towing the line, avoiding tough conversations, and preserving the status quo even when that status quo harms others. In many ways, Blake's current backlash is rooted in this exact contradiction. She was admired for not being dramatic, for not getting involved in messy Hollywood feuds or public breakdowns, but now that same quiet image is being used against her. Her refusal to address the legal drama, the backlash to it ends with us, and the subpoena sent to creators, all of it has created the impression that she's more invested in control than connection. And for modern audiences, that's not just disappointing, it's enraging. The women turning on Blake aren't just former fans. They're thinkers, writers, creators, people who have built communities around shared values and collective understanding. Many of them have survived difficult experiences and found solace in content that reflects those struggles honestly. So when a star like Blake is seen as contributing to the silencing of those voices, even indirectly, it doesn't just spark criticism, it feels like betrayal. There's also an undeniable sense of class tension at play here. Blake Lively represents a very specific kind of elite femininity, the kind that's dressed in couture, married to a famous actor, and protected by lawyers and PR advisors. She's always had access to resources and platforms that most people can't imagine. And when those resources are used to silence dissent, it becomes painfully clear how unequal the playing field really is. A creator with a modest YouTube following shouldn't have to fear legal action for expressing their opinion on a public lawsuit or a film adaptation. But here we are in a world where even that kind of commentary can trigger a subpoena. This isn't to say that Blake has personally signed every legal document or plotted out every step. But in 2025, the public understands how celebrity teams operate. They know that silence often means approval, and they know that the decisions being made in a star's name reflect the values that star is willing to stand behind. If Blake truly disagreed with how her legal representation was handling things, she could say something. She hasn't. Another painful layer to this story is the treatment of survivors. It ends with us resonated with many readers because it told the story of a woman trying to end a cycle of domestic violence, to protect her daughter, to reclaim her voice, to finally break free. For readers who had lived through similar experiences, the book wasn't just fiction, it was a lifeline. So when the film's direction seemed to ignore or gloss over that emotional depth, replacing raw vulnerability with stylized aesthetic, it hurt. And when people tried to speak out about that pain only to find themselves facing legal threats, it sent a clear message: your experience is not welcome here. In many ways, this backlash is about more than one celebrity. It's about the growing fatigue women feel when their voices are dismissed, when their trauma is repackaged for profit, and when their concerns are met with silence or retaliation. Blake Lively is simply the face of that fatigue right now, because she embodies the contradiction so clearly. A woman who built her career on empowerment is now being viewed as someone who benefits from a system that disempowers others. This is especially evident in how the media is covering the situation. Mainstream outlets have been slow to report on the controversy, choosing instead to focus on Blake's fashion or her appearances with Ryan Reynolds. Meanwhile, independent creators, many of them women, are the ones doing the hard work of breaking down the legal documents, analyzing the timeline, and asking the tough questions. It's a clear example of how power shapes the narrative and how women outside of traditional media are often the ones doing the real storytelling. The court of public opinion is powerful, and increasingly it's being shaped by people who refuse to be silenced. TikTok creators are breaking down the timeline of events in minute-long clips. Instagram posts with hundreds of thousands of likes are exposing contradictions in public statements. Long-form YouTube essays are pulling no punches, and across all of these platforms, one message rings out loud and clear: we expect better. What makes this backlash especially hard to dismiss is the clarity and coherence of the critiques. This isn't a scandal driven by misinformation or a what-I'm slip-up. It's a pattern of slow unraveling of trust that's been building for months. From the casting controversy to the court case, from the legal tactics to the silence, each piece has contributed to a broader picture. And that picture is one of a celebrity who is no longer aligned with the values she once claimed. Of course, not everyone has turned on Blake. There are still fans who defend her, who see the backlash as overblown, or who argue that she's being held to an impossible standard, and to some extent that's fair. Celebrities are human and no one gets everything right. But when you've built your entire brand on empowerment and relatability, people expect you to stand by those values, especially when it's difficult. And Blake hasn't. There's also something deeply ironic about the fact that Blake Lively, a woman once praised for staying out of the drama, is now at the center of one of the most dramatic celebrity controversies of the year. It proves something that many women already knew: avoiding conflict isn't the same as doing the right thing. Sometimes doing the right thing means speaking up even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So where does Blake go from here? That remains to be seen. She could choose to stay silent and hope the backlash dies down. She could lean into her PR team and try to spin the narrative. Or, and this is what many are quietly hoping for, she could choose a different path. She could acknowledge the hurt. She could speak directly to the women who feel let down. She could own the ways in which her team's actions have impacted others and commit to doing better. It wouldn't erase the past, but it would be a start. Because at the end of the day, this backlash isn't about hate, it's about accountability. It's about a desire to see powerful women use their platforms to uplift others, not silence them. It's about making sure that empowerment isn't just a tagline, it's a practice. And right now, Blake Lively is being called to live up to the standard she helped set. The question is, will she? Blake Lively's current public unraveling isn't just about a single lawsuit or a celebrity feud, it's about a deeper shift in how audiences, especially women, view accountability, influence, and authenticity in the age of transparency. The backlash she's facing is the product of actions that appear increasingly misaligned with the empowering image she once cultivated. From her silence on key issues to the legal pressure she's placing on independent voices and creators, the narrative has shifted dramatically. What was once interpreted as grace and control is now being questioned as strategic suppression. Women in particular are leading this conversation not out of malice or spite, but out of disappointment. They expected better from someone who positioned herself as a role model, a feminist, and a media-savvy powerhouse. But instead of acknowledging concerns and embracing openness, Blake has doubled down on damage control, aggressive litigation, and curated silence. And that silence for many speaks louder than any publicist-crafted statement ever could. In a world where female empowerment is rooted in truth, vulnerability, and solidarity, not branding, Blake's approach feels outdated. The public no longer tolerates stars who use their platforms to control narratives while silencing others. The backlash is not just about what Blake Lively has done, but about what she represents. In this moment, the dangers of influence without introspection. Whether Blake can rebuild trust remains to be seen. But one thing is clear: she's no longer viewed through the rose-colored lens that once defined her public image. Women are speaking up, pushing back, and holding her accountable. The question now isn't whether she can survive the backlash, it's whether she'll finally listen to the voices she's spent so long trying to silence. Because if she doesn't, the court of public opinion may deliver a far harsher verdict than any courtroom ever could.